Alrighty, guys, how we going? Welcome to the Freshly Awoken podcast number 2. The topic this week is going to be toxic masculinity. Masculinity. There's definitely going to be. I'm going to struggle with that word all night. Just watch. We're here with obviously Fresh Plays Live and myself, Mr. Woke TV. But our special guest this week is Misterevets. He's a fellow streamer who, actually, Misterevets, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and I don't know what you're doing? Where are you from?
Sure. So I am born and raised in Michigan in the U.S. I'm going to put him down because he's heavy. This is Bennett, by the way. He's going to be bugging me all podcast, I'm sure. But
Bennett's a good boy.
Doggo. Lots of doggo lovers here.
Good deal. I live in Michigan. I've lived in Michigan my whole life. My parents are both pastors, so I grew up moving around to different churches when they got appointed to different ones.
Wow.
So I went to 4 different schools growing up, ranging in size from 50 people in a class to like 700. So that was interesting.
Wow.
I ended up going to Western Michigan University for a degree in philosophy, and it's just a bachelor's, nothing fancy. But then after that, I started working at a psychology association where I just do administrative office kind of stuff. So we publish research journals and we hold conferences and conventions so people can share their research. So I just help support that.
That's sick.
Sweet.
And then anything aside from that, I can answer questions, but I don't want to go on too long.
No, that's cool.
That's
So what you're saying is more qualified than us to host this podcast.
That's why he's the guest here. That's why he's here.
I don't know about that.
No, but we've had some really good chats on stream before, so I was straight into hitting Evets up probably like months ago before we even started this. So
yeah,
I've been
I think
keen
you
to
asked
get
me
him
back in like February or something.
Yeah.
But I've been looking forward to it.
Yeah. So we want to introduce Woke, our an ongoing segment that we're going to start in this second part of the stream. What do you want? Beer review? Do we do the clap?
Yeah. Sorry, we got to do it. We need to get like an intro for it, but like beer
review. All right, lads.
Good with the claps. Yeah, good man.
We didn't talk about this beforehand.
Yeah, and also, we didn't talk about this beforehand either. And also, we didn't talk about what we're going to call this. Beer review?
Beer review. Makes sense. Beer review.
Okay, cool.
With the claps.
I completely missed that.
Those claps.
Beer review. Nailed it. All right. Yeah.
Good.
Okay. So I guess we all intro our beer and then we'll crack them open, eh?
Yeah. I mean, we can just say just firstly, we're gonna drink one beer on stream together. A beer that we haven't tried before, or one that we've tried before, to review it, and we'll crack it together at the beginning, drink all the way through, and give it a score out of 20 at the end. So, you know, if you're a beer connoisseur kind of person, feel free to take her advice or not.
I definitely can't promise that there won't be a VB on stream at some point.
Oh, no. All right, well, Evets is the guest. Do you want to go first?
Sure. So it is 9:00 in the morning here, so I did not want to be too adventurous with my beer choice. So I just got one that I know pretty well. It's a Two-Hearted Ale. It's from Bell's, which is based in Kalamazoo. And also, I've got an article up here saying it was ranked #1 in the country by Zymergy magazine. I have never heard of that magazine before, but for 3 years running, it's been named the best beer in America. So. Yeah. I figured I would go for this.
Hey, good choice. Woke?
Nice. I'll go next. So I'm rolling with, and I excuse my camera. I held this up before and you couldn't see it very well, but it's a Peach Invasion New England IPA by Rocky Ridge Brewing Company. So Rocky Ridge, I enjoy quite a lot of their beers, and I've been meaning to try the IPA for quite a while. Apparently, it's got like a peachy flavor to it. Apparently, someone told me, and I've been keen to try it for so long, so I thought I'd get on it tonight. The brewery is down south, Western Australia, and located around Bustleton and the Margaret River wine region. So yeah, I'm pretty stoked to try it. I've been waiting for so long, so I'm keen.
It's very nice. And I've gone with the green screen looks invisible. It's back to front too. The Four Pines IPA. Reverse.
Woo.
Four Pines IPA. I really like the Four Pines brand, so I've tried most of our other ones. I didn't even realize they're an IPA, so try it out. Shall we crack them together, boys? Ready to go?
Yeah, let's crack them.
3, 2, 1, crack.
Ooh.
Ooh.
I don't think I got it on my keyboard.
I held it away from my body in case I like got it on me, and then I was like, oh, that's
And
away
then
from the mic.
Oh no!
Oh no! Everyone's just spilled. Add the podcast ends because we spill all of our beers on the
Yeah.
keyboards.
Shorting out circuitry left, right, and center.
Boring.
Oh,
school.
look at that head!
A little bit too much head.
Let that one settle. All right, very nice, very nice.
Yeah, sweet. So, as I said before, guys, that's our beer review. So we've cracked them open. We'll be reviewing those beers at the end of the podcast after we've had a few sips throughout stream. But yeah, so our topic, as I said before, is toxic masculinity. Is something that Misterevets brought up. We kind of had it on our radar as well a little bit. So when he was like, "Yeah, I want to talk about that," that worked really well for us. So I guess we head straight into it.
Yeah,
where do we start with toxic masculinity, or just masculinity in general?
Yeah, I thought I was going to kind of say it's kind of. I think toxic masculinity is a good title, but it's kind of what at least what we've kind of jotted down seems to be masculinity in general is like, is masculinity in crisis? How do we what's positive masculinity? What's toxic masculinity? Where do we go from here?
Yes. Sorry, guys. Masculinity was the topic. I've been so caught up in talking about and reading and typing about toxic masculinity that I just went with it. But yes, masculinity was the topic.
You got to go with the clickbait title. It's fine.
Oh yeah, definitely. and that leads into one of our points, I guess, is that toxic masculinity is a bit of a clickbait title at the moment. It's it's everywhere. I'm seeing it thrown around by people all the time. It's become like almost a bit of a meme, and I don't know why, but it just doesn't really sit right with me. Every time I hear it, I kind of like, well, is it toxic masculinity, or is it just human toxicity? And I think that's something that I definitely want to address in this podcast. What do you guys think about that?
I feel like that's something that kind of was something I hadn't really thought about before, but when I was looking into it more and trying to figure out where exactly I was coming from on this, that's kind of where I landed too. Is like it's not so much that masculinity in and of itself has to be toxic. It's just that there are a lot of behaviors that are really toxic that have long been associated with men, unfortunately, but that doesn't mean that men are the only people who do it. So I kind of landed in the same spot where like this is toxic behavior, like first and foremost, as opposed to it's toxic because it's masculinity. Like that doesn't make sense, and that doesn't sit right with me either, because I don't think I'm a particularly toxic person, except in Rocket League.
That's
usually.
what you think.
Yeah, I don't think. If anybody in chat thinks differently, let me know, I guess.
No, Vets is lovely. Yeah, I think there's got to be some. I think what we can keep exploring is there's some sort of balance in between men are 100% toxic and men are zero. If you're saying men are 100% toxic, then, or masculinity is 100% toxic, then that's too far that way. And if you're saying men are 0% toxic or don't have the propensity to be toxic at all, then that's probably too far that way too. So let's try and find a place in the middle somewhere.
Definitely. But I think that we need to figure out where, because I feel like if you're talking about masculine toxicity at all, then what you're doing is you're assigning toxicity to male roles. And I don't like the fact that that's thrown out there when it shouldn't be. I don't know. That's just how I feel.
I kind of feel the same way. And I think I was trying to say that, but yeah, I feel like associating it with masculinity isn't going to do anything but perpetuate it.
That's good,
because people aren't going to want to talk about it if you're just saying all men are evil. Like that's not a good conversation starting point. You've killed it right off the bat. So
yeah, true, very true. All right, do we want to how should we go about this? Maybe Yvette, do you want to chuck a point out that you started with through the week, or had a thought about through the week?
Yeah, so actually I think this was something that you brought up while I was watching you like a week or two ago. Or maybe no, it was on the last podcast, I think, when you guys were doing your intro. The idea that boys like growing up, or even guys like at our age or older, when we hang out, we need to have some kind of vehicle or some kind of activity that we're doing rather than just talking to each other. And I feel like a lot of that comes from the idea that like it's not masculine to be open with your emotions and talk with your friends about like what's really going on. That's something that you save for your romantic partner. But I don't think that that's a healthy pattern. I think that you need to be able to talk to your friends because those are the people who are supposed to be there for you, and you're supposed to be there for them. So I don't know if you guys want to maybe talk about why you think that is a or not a stereotype, but like a situation we find ourselves in often.
Yeah, definitely. I guess where I was coming out with that, and where I could speak like a completely anecdotal kind of evidence is that if I'm chatting with a young guy as opposed to a young girl, it seems like a talk over throwing a ball to each other or like shooting some hoops creates less tension in the talks, and it's still connecting and still talking, I would say, but yeah, I mean, just completely based on experience, boys, and I don't like having these just based on experience kind of conversations because it sometimes can be very ambiguous, but boys seem to feel, well, maybe like what you're saying, boys seem to feel threatened if you're just talking to them, or it creates this, it's not very normal. It's a bit countercultural to just kind of have a chat with each other, especially about things like we're doing now.
Right.
What do you reckon, Woke?
I'm not sure. I think that it comes from like the fact that we always have to be like doing things. I think that that's where it comes from. It like, whenever I was with people growing up, it was always doing, it was never talking. And I feel like girls have that a lot more growing up, where it's like, I don't know, especially with them, maybe it's like a parent thing where you are with girls with their mum, it's a lot more talking and it's a more personalized relationship. Whereas I feel like I didn't have that with my dad. We weren't having conversations. We were always doing things. And I think that, I don't know, that's my experience at least. And I think that that's where it kind of stems from in my life.
It's interesting that you should say that, because I actually I did have that kind of relationship with my dad. He made it very clear that we could come to him with anything, and that doesn't necessarily mean I came to him with everything, but I knew that I could. And I knew that I could have open, honest discussions with him. And I think part of that comes from the fact that he's a pastor, so there's like counseling training that goes with that. So there's that aspect, and then also just that's how he raised us. So I didn't necessarily come from the same spot, but my dad always wanted to know what I was going to do when I went over to my friend's house. And I think that came from more of a place of, I don't want you guys to get into trouble, like idle hands are the devil's plaything. So like you said, we always have to be doing something. So I think that's kind of where it comes from for me, but that it's interesting that we have such different jumping off points and ended up kind of in the same
definitely
place.
True.
Yeah, definitely. Because I mean, it's definitely something that I struggle with. It's definitely, I not only struggle with trying to, or like talking about my feelings and talking about things that are going on in my life. It's also like a privacy thing. I feel very shut off, from, or like I don't share I don't get intimate, I guess, with other guys. Intimate maybe is the wrong word to use here.
Hey man, you can get intimate with me, Work. It's fine.
Yeah, not intimate in that way, obviously. Chat, settle down. But like intimate in terms of what we're speaking about. Yeah. I don't know. I guess that's just my experience.
Interesting. Like growing up, I had we used to call it small group. So it was like a small group Bible study coming out of church, and it became a place where weekly we would go and we would share, like we'd just share about our week basically, and like best stuff, worst stuff, and stuff that we're kind of looking to grow in. And it was it started off pretty different to how it ended up, and we ended up being really, really close and having these conversations. And as we would bring people in, we'd have friends who'd come in and be like, look, like I don't get this kind of connection with other guys like anywhere in life, having these like pretty meaningful conversations on a weekly kind of basis and having this connection. So this is a really countercultural thing to do. So yeah, I guess in a way, like it's not really done very often.
I mean, I grew up in church. Obviously, we covered that last podcast that we both grew up in church fresh, and I experienced the same thing. And it was very much like, oh, this is against what is the norm in society, what we're trying to do here. But I still didn't, I guess, manage to open up fully to that. And yeah, which is it's weird. I guess it's one of those things that everybody has different. Like, takes things on board differently.
I would say it was a huge positive for me. Like keeping those friends and opening up to them heaps, guided me heaps through adolescent life. Definitely.
I want to like, what about if you look at it from like the opposite perspective of, like, do we think that, like, why do we think that opening up and being super open and aware is the positive thing? Open and aware is the wrong thing, but like being really open about our feelings and talking about that all the time. Why do we assume that is where we kind of need to aim for? Why aren't we thinking like, oh, it's actually better to be a bit reserved, you know?
So I think there are two reasons that I think that it's important to be open and honest with yourself and with your friends in that way. And I think the first one is because it's part of self-care. And there's something to be said for being emotionally resilient and being emotionally independent and being able to take care of yourself. But finding yourself in a situation where you can't do that and not having practiced talking to people about those things, I feel like really is a huge drawback when you need it. So that's one.
Yeah.
And then the other one that I've been seeing a lot when I've been looking at this topic online is from the female perspective. And if any ladies in the chat want to correct me, please feel free. But a lot of them feel like when they get into relationships, they have to be their boyfriend or husband or whatever. They have to be their emotional support crutch because they're the only person that guy feels like they can talk to, because they haven't developed those relationships with their friends. So whereas the woman in this situation typically, not always, but typically will have friends that she can go to and she can talk to about the hard things that are going on in her life. Guys don't necessarily do that as much. And then all of that burden and all of that stress gets put on the female partner in that situation.
And on the relationship.
So those are the two things that really, and on the relationship. And it's not fair to either person.
It's the stress.
So those are the two things that I think push it in that direction. But I think that you can go too far too. And I think you can overshare. And I think it is important to be private about certain things. But like I said, to still have that practice with opening up and talking about things, so that when the really hard stuff does come along, you can actually talk about it.
Yeah.
Instead of like not knowing where to start.
I think in general, not many guys overshare as opposed to undersharing. Just as a completely general statement, haven't met too many guys who tell you too much, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. And and I definitely agree with that point that like it's kind of it becomes a negative thing when you get into those situations where you need to be able to openly communicate your feelings and your thoughts, and you can't do it because you have no practice in it. And so that's probably where we kind of get that, oh, it's a good thing. Especially, I guess, I mean, in today's world with a lot more people kind of coming out of the woodwork, I don't want to say suffering from, but coming out of the woodwork in terms of like mental illness and stuff like that, being able to openly communicate your feelings is just super, super important. And
absolutely.
But once again, I definitely agree that you can take that too far. And I think taking that too far is losing. I guess you lose yourself in the people around you, because I feel like you become like you would become like a bit of a sponge. Like the more you give out of yourself, the less of yourself is actually you. I don't know. I don't know.
I think I know where you're coming from, and if I can take it a little bit further, I think. Hold on, I just totally lost my train of thought. Shoot. You can overshare. So I think that you can also become a bit of a sponge in the sense that you're taking up everyone else's energy. So not that energy is finite necessarily, but like we only have so much at a given time. And if you have a friend who every single time they talk to you, they just want to talk about the bad things, they just want to unload all of it onto you, then that puts a lot of strain on your relationship. Just like I was saying with, like, if you're in a romantic relationship, the same situation can happen with everybody in your life if you're not careful, where you're just dumping your emotional baggage on everyone else so you don't have to deal with it. I feel like that is kind of the danger that I see in oversharing, because like I do have friends who do that, and it's tough to want to talk to them sometimes, and I want to be there for them.
Yeah.
But every single time I talk to him, it's rough. It's just like
I get that.
I care about you, but I can only do so much. You know?
It's rare that you meet guys like that, I think, but there are plenty like that, and it's
they're definitely out there.
It's a trend.
Yeah, I think that so like in terms of a positive way to do this, I think that I definitely have like one or maybe two guys in my life that I consider close enough friends, or like that I'm, I guess, tight enough with, that I share pretty much all of my life with. But it's like a mutual relationship. So it's not like just me talking or like downloading onto them. It's also they do the same to me. And I think that an important factor in that kind of relationship is that two-way street, because I know a lot of people in my life as well that, well, not a lot of people, but a couple of people who just want to vent. And when it's always one way like that, it's so draining mentally on you as a person, that it's almost like that becomes like a toxic thing, but like flip the other way, you know? A little bit.
Definitely. Yeah, I agree.
Nice.
What a robust debate.
I agree.
I
agree. Yeah. Well, I feel like this is not necessarily something that, I don't know, there's a lot of disagreement on that that it's better to be able to have better emotional connections with male friends. But I definitely think that there is negative stigma around it, and I don't know. Yeah, I don't know where that stemmed from. I think how did we all like kind of grow up in different ways, experience different relationships and different environments growing up, but all arrive at the same point where we all kind of feel that need to withdraw from male friends a bit more than we do from female friends, or like a potential girl we get in a relationship with. And I just don't see how we can all arrive at a similar place.
Do you think it's maybe historically where it's been portrayed as more of a feminine trait, and especially historically males have seen that as being a weak kind of trait, and that's maybe where it's led to? That's how I would see that kind of poor outlook on it came from.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think it's a cultural thing, and you could say it goes back to like the days when the men went out and hunted and the women stayed at home and like cooked whatever. But I don't think it's necessarily that old. I think it may be something that was pushed in, like, at least in America. I don't know so much about overseas, but in America, I think that was really pushed in like the early to mid 1900s, and just like the whole man up thing. And there was more of a gender assignment shift when, like, from going to all babies wear white to girls wear pink and guys wear blue. Like that's a relatively recent thing. Like that's the last 100 years or so.
Yeah.
So I think it's possible that this kind of stuff also has ties to that. And a lot of that's honestly, a lot of that is just commercialism and people wanting to sell more stuff. Which this is a really terrible effect if that is the cause.
Yeah, right.
Totally.
Just screwing over society just to make a little bit of money, you know?
Yep.
Can't say I'm not
the
surprised.
way of the world. Fun.
No, it's not a new story.
No,
yeah, definitely not.
I think the man up, what you said. So you wrote something down as well about manning up being the phrase rather, man up being helpful or harmful, and that definitely, like you said, early to mid 1900s, and like I can definitely see that in grandparents and even father's generation. That phrase, like man up, you know, be able to change a tire, be able to, you know, lift heavy stuff, man up, overcome that adversity? Is that a helpful thing, a harmful thing? What do you guys reckon?
I think it can be a little bit of both, because like if you fall down and you scrape your knee and you start bawling about it, that doesn't help the situation at all, and it's not going to help your knee at all. So I think like a situation like that where it's a superficial thing, I think it's okay to say man up. I don't know if necessarily man up is the way to say it. Maybe just like be
Toughen
strong
up?
or something like that. Toughen
Yeah.
up, yeah. But I think again, associating it with masculinity, it makes it sound like women can't do it. And I know a lot of really tough women. So I feel like it's helpful to tell people to toughen up in some situations, unhelpful in other situations where like if I have a real problem and you're my friend and I come to you and you're just like, toughen up. It's not that big a deal. That's not helpful.
Yeah.
But I don't know how I feel about it. I have very mixed feelings about the whole man up thing because it seems rather ambiguous and like just whatever. It's part of the nomenclature, part of the culture, whatever. But I don't know. It seems like maybe that has some ties to kind of what we're talking about too. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, like I don't really have much to add here. I agree with you 100% that when you make something about it like I don't want to take it there, but like if you're assigning something to a gender or to a role or to a race and making it all about that one thing, you're excluding everybody that is not assigned to it, if you know what I mean. So when you say man up, you're just you're saying that like this is an inherently male trait when it's not, and like something that you want men to display when actually you want humans in general to display that. You want resilience and ability to persevere in tough situations from everybody in the world. And yeah, I guess I'm not well versed in where man up kind of started. It must have started somewhere, but yeah, I think it's not a great way to put it, and
yeah. I mean, the cost of changing that to toughen up is probably relatively low compared to.
Pretty small.
Yeah,
I know, but like what, like, and I think that's the big debate, or like part of the big debate these days is like, should we be forcing these these changes because it is leading us down like a bad path where men get like a negative stereotype for things? Should we be forcing the language changes? But that's like a huge whole other topic.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying we should have like legislation that says we can't say man up or something.
No. I know. No. I'm not suggesting that either. I'm just saying that like that's kind of where it goes when you say like, oh, well, it's actually, I think we can all agree that it's probably not a good idea to be like, to be saying to people, oh, man up in certain situations, or that it's assigned to a specific gender. Then the logical like opposite of that kind of thing is, all right, well, we need to shut down people saying man up.
Yeah, I get that. I guess it's more. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say I think it's part of just language changing as time goes on. Language just does that. So I think maybe we're more aware of it now.
Yeah,
definitely because of the internet, and also because this is such a heated topic, and people just get so mad about it, and that's what travels like wildfire on the internet. So I wonder if maybe that's why there's so much focus on it right now as opposed to some other things. But I think it might just be language changing. And our perspectives about it.
And it totally depends how you approach it as well. Like if we can have a pretty civil discussion around it and trying to explain a bit of why it could possibly be a derogatory statement or term, that's great. But if you just label people as, I don't know, misogynist straight up, which a lot of people do, then that's probably not as helpful and probably would not help out. Mr. Woke, thanks for that, host.
I was just like, oh wait, I forgot to click host Fresh Plays Live, so I was like, oh quick, better click that now. I think that awareness is language changing is where we're going, but it awareness is what helps to create those situations where we can change the language and change the stereotypes and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, that's part of what this podcast is about, is just like, I don't know, getting it, that message and that talking about it and getting it a little bit further and raising a little bit more awareness and having the conversation. So
exactly.
Yeah.
That's why we're here,
Definitely.
boys.
But, I mean, just to roll into another topic here, that it kind of flows on, is that it's getting out there. These messages are getting. Do you think it's positive that these messages are getting out there through some of the toxic masculinity gone viral kind of videos? For example, like the Gillette commercial that just like went crazy, and I know a lot of guys took that very, not badly, but there was definitely at least online there was a big arc up to it.
Huge backlash.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And is that the way to go about it, or should we be more reinforcing positivity rather than attacking? I think, which it felt like.
What did it feel like attacking for you, the Gillette commercial?
I mean, I've said this last week that I kind of like, I definitely I flip one way and then I flip the other, and one day I'm one day I'm like, oh man, yeah, you're right, that did really bug me, and then the next day I'm like, it's just a commercial, like what does it matter? But I think that when, I don't know, that's another topic entirely, but like when companies get involved trying to sell things based on negative stereotypes about my gender, I definitely think that I have a right to get annoyed in some respect,
Yeah, I think it's incredibly patronizing when companies get involved in that kind of thing. And it's one thing for like a company to donate a bunch of money to a cause that they care about, but to just like jump on board this train so they can make money off it again, I think that again they're doing more harm than good, because it's good to have some of that out there, because it makes the conversation happen. It makes people talk about their different perspectives on it, because it gets a response from you. But
definitely.
I think the constant, like, this is terrible, this is terrible, this is terrible, this is terrible, like the way that it's been going, it's not a conversation starter anymore. It's just the whole conversation. And I don't think that's helpful.
Yeah.
I think some of that, to bring awareness to a situation, to bring awareness to a problem that's actually happening, that's good, because you can't fix a problem if you don't know it's there. But to just keep bashing people over the head with it, I don't think that's productive at all.
Yeah.
That's my take.
I think the fact, so yeah, two things. I think the fact that it was a marketing thing for a razor blade company was really, that just left like a bad taste in most people's mouths. They're like, oh, like, what are your motives here? Do you really care, or are you just trying to make money? And to be honest, they probably were trying to make money. And to be honest, it probably works because they got so much publicity out of it. But I think the thing for me is that people getting, I saw the commercial, and before I saw any like responses from everyone, I thought it was pretty good. It showed like these poor or toxic actions by men, and then it showed some like ways that you could remedy that or be an influencer positively as a man in your society. And then and I was like, it made me really suspect of like why guys were getting really angry about it, because I was like, well, yeah, what's the reason? I think it's probably because if you're, what's the right way to say it? If you're, to people who are privileged, I guess equality sometimes feels like segregation, or a big step down.
Well, evening out the power kind of feels like someone's losing some.
Yeah.
Kind of where you're going.
Yeah, exactly. When you're in a position of privilege, equality feels like you're going downwards.
Because okay, so I definitely at times was like saner heads prevailed in my life over that Gillette commercial, but there was definitely times where I was like annoyed by it. But I'll be honest, I think it was more that they were using this, such an important debate and such an important thing that's going on in this big shift in society, and huge amounts of change and huge amounts of young men that are growing up and trying to deal with this, who, like, it's all very well for me to say this as a 29-year-old who's had his life to be able to get used to and stabilize and whatever. But imagine like a 14-year-old boy seeing that ad and being affected by it. And I think that for a company to take and I think I was most annoyed by the fact that it was a company. It was the wrong way to do it. It's the wrong way to bring this conversation into the limelight, is through selling power and trying to sell things, which
yeah.
And I think, excuse my sarcasm, has it spot on. If the outrage is the point, it's like PETA, they rely on outrage to give them free exposure. Going viral is the point. It's the same thing with like Colin Kaepernick and the whole kneeling during the national anthem, and there was a whole big thing about that, and there was a big boycott of Nike, but people like bought Nike stuff and they burned it, which isn't how a boycott works, but whatever. But again, a situation where like Nike just hopped on board because they knew this was something that would get them lots of exposure and make them lots of money. So I think that's maybe why Gillette did that, but I don't think it was necessarily the right way to go about it. And
So-
I don't have a problem with the ad either, but I understand why some people do.
Yeah, but would you say that, like, is there a better way to get this conversation to go viral and to get it into people's minds? Because like, as much as I hate the ad, it did spark several conversations in my life with guys who I would never have had that conversation with ever.
Yeah, this is true.
Really, I think.
This is true.
And it was only because it blew up, because it sparked outrage, and then it became viral, and people were telling their friends about it, and they were going to watch it, and then everybody's seen it and everybody's talking about it. Like, I had people at work asking me what my thought was. Like, I didn't even hear about it for like a week after it happened, until someone was like, what were your thoughts on the Gillette commercial? And I had to actually go and find it.
Yeah. I'm not like overly adverse to big corporations stepping into the realm of, well, kind of, I'm adverse to them stepping into the realm of, well, like prescribing morals to society. It seems like that's maybe not where they should be, but raising awareness is probably the right thing to do. And I guess they raised outrage, which raised awareness, made it go viral. It's works like in this beer.
Yeah, man. Sorry, I just had a sip then and was like, whoa, I've been really caught up in the conversation.
I noticed that you haven't had many sips.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, but like, it's always advertising. I think the only time I've really kind of seen it was seen it not done where it's like advertising a product was when it there was these YouTube ads a little while ago that were, it was kind of like, it's hard to describe, and I did try to find the ad on YouTube, but I just couldn't find it, or like search up the ad. But it was kind of like a group setting around a dining experience out, and the man is displaying very, very like to the extreme toxic behavior that I have not seen. I have not seen that in my life from anybody. You know, being like squeezing the waiter's bum and whatever, and then the awkward silence around the table as everybody feels really uncomfortable for the waiter, and then it's like, you have this many seconds to speak up and no one says anything, you know, and then it just moves on, and it's like,
I feel like I saw a different version of that, where it was like,
there's like several different versions.
Okay.
There's like 10
I didn't
different
see
versions
that
of it.
overt
There's one where he's like, ha, as if a woman could be a CEO. I don't know any person in my life that would say that.
To be fair, you work in hospitality. Do you work in a restaurant?
I do.
Okay. I did that for 8 years. I don't know what things are like over there in terms of restaurant and how wait staff is treated, but that's not an uncommon thing here at all.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, to be honest, and I jotted it down so I wouldn't forget it. Sorry. I actually encountered it at work for one of the probably one of the first times. Just recently, like a week ago, actually, there was a guy at the till who was like, said to the team member, or the girl that was on the till serving him, oh, it would be nice if you, or like, give us a smile kind of thing. And she just was like deadpan and was just like, why? And I'll be honest, I have not, even though I've been working hospitality for like six or so years, and I've not really experienced anything even to that level, and that's like not even that bad, really. But I mean, it's, you know, it's still, she was obviously made uncomfortable by it, you know.
Yeah.
And
well, and I think that kind of situation, like, my personal take on that is if you're working in customer service, then you should be smiling for that reason, not because you're prettier.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I kind of agree, but yeah,
but
that's beside the point.
But I
had
have
a massive
several
smile on my
friends.
face.
I have several friends though who have literally had their bums grabbed, and
right.
have
Wow.
been touched inappropriately in other ways. I've worked in restaurants where we're open after the bars close at 2 a.m. and all the wasted guys come in and they just think it's okay to do things that it's not okay to do.
Yeah.
And
right.
I definitely think that depends on, you know, where you live, what kind of restaurant it is, all that good stuff. But I definitely can 100% confirm that is a thing that does happen. Unfortunately, it's terrible.
Yeah, right. And I guess,
but
well, then
we're talking about it, and we won't do it now, right?
Yeah, right. Well, I mean,
Yeah, right.
I don't. Yeah, guys, I'll stop now.
Oh my gosh.
I guess, like, I think that, so let's roll. I think maybe can we roll into like what in that situation can you potentially do
As a guy, like a bystander guy.
as a guy, like like imagine you're in that situation and a female friend of yours gets her bum grabbed. You know, I mean, we're kind of, I don't know. Are we off topic a little bit? But
No,
I'm not
that's
sure.
good. It's good.
No,
because
I
like
think
this is considered toxic male behavior.
Yeah, definitely.
I feel like we've definitely gone down that
Yeah.
toxic masculinity path. But like, what can a guy do in that situation? Because I've been in that situation where someone has been a friend of mine was called a slut after a very drunken night out.
Oh.
Yeah, sorry. And a lot of people kind of arced up at that and jumped to her defense physically, which I definitely know from. I didn't jump to the physical side of things. I kind of tried to end the physical side of things because I knew that it just wasn't going to work. Like, how can you positively help that situation? I guess. Yeah.
I think the best thing you can do in that situation is verbally, not physically, unless your friend is in danger, in which case you know it's not wrong to jump in physically. I don't think, but assuming that it was something comparatively speaking rather innocuous, like getting grabbed in the butt, as opposed to like pulled in for a wet sloppy kiss that you don't want or something like that. I think the most important thing you can do is just say something and say, hey, dude, that's not okay. That is 100% not okay. And you should not be doing that. And I will not let you do that to my friend. Because A, that lets the person know that they did something wrong. Because someone who's not involved in the situation saw it and said, no, that's not okay. And B, your friend knows that you're there for them. Because something happened and at least you said something about it. Like starting a fight over it, it's probably only going to make things worse. And it's definitely not going to change the other person's mind. But if you just say, hey, dude, don't do that. That's not acceptable. Then they know they did something wrong and your friend knows that you're standing with them. So that's what I think you should do in that situation. Fresh?
Yeah, I agree. And I think it comes down to, well, obviously, most people intrinsically know why it's wrong to be acting that way. But then a lot of silly arguments that I hear about it would be like, well, what if a girl does that to a guy? Is that okay? And clearly it's not. But it seems to happen a lot more with guys doing it to girls. And I think it's got to do with the whole power dynamic, I guess, which we can go into. But
predatory behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then where does that stem from? Because I like nothing in my life that I can potentially see has ever led me down the path of wanting to do any of that kind of stuff or feeling like a predator or anything like that. So
good. Yeah, good.
I just when I hear about someone that would just go and grab someone's bum, and I'm not trying to like get on my like moral high horse here and be like, oh, well, I would never do that. But like, I struggle to see the connection. I can't see myself ever having learned anything in my life that would ever lead me to think that was acceptable.
I think a lot of that comes down to environment. And Fresh, you work with kids. I assume you also talk to their parents?
Yeah, definitely.
Would you say that kids that I don't want to say problem kids, but kids that have problems maybe.
Mm.
Would you say that their parents are typically more or less willing to have those conversations and actually try to do something to fix it?
Yeah.
Or are they more like, no, he's fine?
Yeah, no, kids, like you said, kids are really very interesting because they're like a blank canvas. They kind of just believe and are molded in the way that their role models, which are usually their parents, will mold them. So you go and see parents and you're like, that's exactly why a kid's that way. And it will be, yeah, I mean, they just kind of adopt views or activities that their parents would be more inclined to act in.
Yeah. I think that it comes down a lot to parenting and the standards that you set as a parent. Because, as much as I said earlier that me and my dad might not have been very chatty and talkative, but I definitely had an example set for me, a role model that was someone that I could model myself off that would never display those kind of behaviors.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that a lot of things, not just masculinity, come down to the kind of parents that you get that are willing to actually step up and say, hey, I'm the parent here, and that is not acceptable behavior. There's a famous ad in Australia that went around woke. You sorry, run on sentences.
Stronger.
Fresh. You probably remember the ad where it's like the boy is like pushing the girl.
Yeah.
And then the mum comes over and is like, oh, he just likes you.
He just likes you, yeah, yep.
You know, and then the ad goes like, hey, don't do this.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And what I got away from that ad was like some people treat it as like, oh, boys shouldn't be doing that. But what I took away from that ad is, parents, like buck up.
Yeah.
You know, buck up and take responsibility in that situation. If you're telling your kid, oh, that boy likes you, and not going to that boy's parents and being like, you need to talk to your son about he just pushed my daughter over. Like, parent.
Yep.
Yeah, and I see this so much in the world. In hospitality, Fresh, you've probably got another take on this, but in hospitality, the whole just absentee parents and letting their kids run wild and have tantrums about the silliest things that, man, I would never have been allowed to ever get away with when I was a kid. No way.
Yep.
You know?
Yep. It's true. We're living in like this interesting time of this like ridiculous generational gap caused by technology. And we've always had a generational gap, definitely. But it feels like it's getting wider because of the stuff available to kids at such an early age. Well, they've got the world of information available to them. So this gap is just being created because parents are not as well versed in technology as they are. And creates heaps of problems.
I was just going to say, my friend's 5-year-old daughter has an iPad.
Yeah.
To use about.
Yeah, exactly.
My niece literally the other day was like, woke, like not woke. She didn't say woke. She doesn't know me as woke. But she was like, hey, woke. Like pictures. Like, do you want to take a picture? Because like obviously we take cute pictures with her. And it was all a ploy because she knows that once I unlock my phone, she can, do a couple of swipes. She's 2 years old. Do a couple of swipes and find YouTube where she knows the Wiggles are on.
As a 2-year-old?
As a 2-year-old.
That's insane.
I was blown away. And like literally, and like I talked to my sister and she was like, I don't think she watches that much. I think she's just literally noticed that we use our phones and how we use our phones.
Yeah.
And like a couple of times we've let her watch Wiggles on YouTube and she's figured that out. And she's 2 years old. Wow. So like technology 100% is like just changing the world.
Yep.
And the way we learn and the way we parent and the way we experience things. And I mean, leaning back into masculinity, you see that with like, there's so many sexist memes out there.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And how our younger generation growing up in this huge meme swell culture, I guess, I don't know really what to call it. And how when you've got things that the internet has just got some very, very deep and dark places where these things come from, I guess. Yeah. And it's impossible to stem the flow.
It's really hard to regulate what kids look at on the internet as well. Really, really hard.
Did you guys hear about this whole Belle Delphine thing?
No.
I know who
Costco?
Delphine is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna try and not do anything that would violate TOS in describing this, but it's about it. She said that if she got so many follows or likes or whatever, that she would put a video up on Pornhub,
Wow.
and she
Wow.
did, and it was just a video of her playing with stuffed cats, I think, or something. Like I just read the story, I didn't track the video down, but
Good.
there was a ton of outrage from like 12, 13, 14-year-old boys
What?
who were so mad at her and like sending death threats and stuff because she tricked them.
Oh
I think she
my
deserves a Gamer
goodness.
of the Year award because that's
Wow.
like the best
I mean,
troll ever.
That's a good troll.
Right, well
But-
played. Got all the likes. Got
Who
all
is
the
Belle
attention.
Delphine?
Got all the
Is she
subs.
who is she?
She's a
She's-
cosplayer,
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the easy
Instagram
way.
model and stuff.
Good job. Good summary.
But I think that is representative of what we were just talking about, like not
Yeah.
necessarily a meme, but internet culture just being so wrapped up in like you are something that is there for me to consume.
Mm.
Like you aren't a person, you are a product that like you owe me. You got to deliver, or I'm just like I don't care about you at all. And I feel like that goes both ways, but I feel like it's more prevalent both online and just like in real life with the male view of women. And it's I don't know that I'm saying that. I don't know that I'd stand behind that 100%, but it's kind of where my train of thought is going.
No, I'd say like especially like on the topic of internet pornography and like taking the moral aspect completely out of it, just thinking completely practically. It's such a huge problem for young boys. It's hectic.
Mm-hmm.
Just the way that they see women and the violence that is often in these videos is just perpetuates these really bad ideas.
And you reckon that definitely contributes to like these, like leading a man down the path of being toxic, or like
yeah, well, it contributes to how younger. I mean, I suppose I'm talking about the context of young relationships mainly. It definitely, you hear plenty about young girls who are expected to do things that are just well beyond their age, I guess is the best way to say it.
I am not a young woman, and I never have been. I probably never will be.
but
But
might be an old woman one day.
I also think that some of that is not just on the male side, but because like if a girl goes and watches porn to figure out what sex is supposed to be like, then she just thinks that's the situation that like that's what a relationship is. So I think it doesn't necessarily just affect guys. I think it just perpetuates that culture. Yeah, and it's not a healthy one.
Yep. I mean, I only obviously talk to guys about it, young guys rather. It'd be weird for me to talk to young girls about it. So, that's where my experience is in that. Good.
Definitely. I feel like I might have dominated a little bit of the topics there. Definitely took us down the road of male toxicity when it comes to women and that kind of thing. I know that Fresh, you want to talk a little bit more about like how we like as older men, and I guess I know having our lives a little bit more together, I guess, and feeling like we're a bit more on top of our masculinity and what it means and what's positive in it and what's negative in it. How what our role is when it comes to setting an example to these younger boys and yeah. I know that you really wanted to talk about that.
So I can see very clearly that we're super responsible as older guys to set a good example. Like we're talking about parents before. It's astounding. We're like a loaded gun basically in front of young guys, and if we do the wrong thing, and if we set up these really poor ways of thinking and doing things, then it's really irresponsible of us. And the interesting thing because we talk a lot about adult toxic masculinity, and I guess I'm talking about like responsible role models, so that's where you can think about that. But then thinking about young boys, and that was my second point, I guess. I see way more. So like a group of 5 young boys, the difference between what a group of 5 young boys is going to do compared to what one young boy is going to do is just crazy. So 5 young boys, and I don't know if this is an Australian thing, so you can definitely speak into this too, Vets, but the our culture, especially like the guys, the way we get along, we do like a little bit of what would you call it, jousting, a little bit of teasing, a little bit of, you know, one-upping here and there, which is to an extent called for. And I often like talk to guys about where that's appropriate and where you need to stop and that kind of thing. But I mean, 5 young boys will get together and light cats on fire. Like it's just hectic, the stuff that they'll do, and that's where things can be really toxic. Is it like that in the US?
That's definitely not. That is not just an Australian thing.
Okay.
And I think maybe part of that comes from, like if you just one-on-one with someone, there's no outside social expectation for you to do one thing or another. Whereas if you're in a group, it's almost like with the like one-upping and like a little bit of, you know, joshing around back and forth and name calling, whatever. Like it's understood once you get older that that's just joking around. But when you're younger, that's the way that you like push for pole position. Like somebody's got to be the leader of the group, and that person gets to decide what you're going to do, and everybody looks up to them. And different people in the group are going to want to hold that spot. So I think maybe that's where some of that comes from. Is just like, well, if I'm just here with my one friend, then that's fine. But like, if I'm here with my one friend and then the girl I like walks past, like I'm gonna beat up my friend to show her how tough I am. Like it's not so much that person, like that kid who decides he's gonna beat up his friend, is a bad person. It's just the wrong response to that situation. But I think there is social pressure to prove that you are tough if you're a guy. And so if you can't take the name calling, then you're not tough enough. So
that's what people will say.
What were you gonna say, Luke?
So at what point does that, like, at what point do we, like, we obviously talk about maturity and we kind of grow out of these things. At what point are we old enough to be able to realize that this one-upmanship and this vying for pole position is not something we do? Is that something that's like kind of inherently in us because of the fact that at our base level we are reproductive animals, I guess?
Vying for the mate.
Like I don't know, like I feel like I mean, you specifically mentioned the scenario where like there's a girl that walks past, and I've been in that situation several times growing up, where like seven exactly. I counted them. I listed them. I wrote down the list just before. Where we're in high school, where there's a female present, and I mean, actually, not even just in high school, into my 20s, where there's someone there that I want to impress in some way. But I mean, as you grow older, that displays, I guess I'm not displaying in as a toxic way, but I've seen that situation where a kid is beating up on some other kid just because some girl was around, you know, and where I completely lost where I was going.
Well, I think it started out with, is this just part of the human condition?
I guess is what I was trying to say, you know, like we are beasts at heart, you know.
I think to some extent it's fair to say that, especially if you look at nature and you look at like the different posturing and thing and like different fights for mates, stuff like that happens in nature. I think there's an argument to be made there, but I think there's also an argument to be made that it's our responsibility as intelligent creatures who are self-aware to make things better for each other, and that doesn't make things better for each other. So I think you could say that comes from like a primal place, but I don't think that's a good enough argument to let it happen or let it continue to happen.
Yeah, I agree.
So, you know, it might be natural behavior, but it's still behavior that can be shifted. You know?
It's important to be like it's important, and it's easier for adults too, because we've learnt these skills of being resilient and just general social intelligence, I guess you'd say. So we know when we can usually tell a lot better than younger people when somebody's a bit upset or has taken things the wrong way. So and a lot of the work that I do with young boys is trying to help them build resilience, because you know, and there's extremes where boys won't be able to take any banter at all, and they'll overreact completely and make things really a lot worse for themselves. So that's when it's a bad thing. Good, but we still like, even in our what's our group chat work, where we just like it's almost constant banter, and to my knowledge, you're not hurt.
No, but like,
Have you ever asked
Yeah, have you?
Yeah.
Are you okay?
Oh no. Yeah. I hope you are.
Yeah, no, but yeah, it's just such a fine line to tread, because you've got to. I don't know. It's such an ingrained part of male relationships, that banter. I feel,
Mhm.
and like, do we need to ask ourselves why, and if it really is healthy? And then you've got, I guess, the flip side of it is I look at quite a lot of female relationships and I go, man, I want no part of that.
Wait, what?
You
Do
know?
they have banter?
No, not banter and
Oh.
like cattiness and
Okay.
if you're looking at that like female, that when you go over to the other side, and I think that actually, sorry to kind of like digress a little bit here, but that is a good tell for the fact that it's more to do with human toxicity, is the fact that there is another side to when you're looking at
absolutely.
male toxicity. If you look over on the female side as well, and some of their relationships, and especially in high school and growing up, there is some ridiculous toxicity there.
Oh yeah.
And that tells me that it's just toxic behavior in general that we need to try to stamp out and stop being like, this is male and this is a men thing. Like, it's not okay to do these things.
Yeah, good point.
I guess.
I think the reason that I tend to think of it, or at least in terms of this conversation, I wanted to talk about male masculinity, toxic masculinity, as opposed to just toxicity in general, is just because we are all guys. So that's the only perspective
we don't.
that I feel like
we don't have as
young white guys talking about females.
Let me tell you how it is, women.
That is not to say that I believe that men are the only ones who can be toxic, because there's definitely stuff that goes on the other side. That's good to point out.
Good point.
But I don't want to personally. I don't want to speak too much for.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
But I think that's a valid point to say that it does happen on both sides, and it's not called feminine toxicity in the same way that it's called
toxic masculinity. Yeah.
Whatever.
Whatever it's called.
You got it.
And it is a similar situation where sometimes that toxicity does lead into later life. And I'm playing mixed netball at the moment, and I can tell you right now that
You're playing what?
The mixed netball. Wait, you guys don't have much netball in America. You don't. You honestly, it's so
netball.
strange. Netball, yeah. No. Do you have it a little bit netball?
It's like what is netball? Wow, it's like
it's so funny that they have netball.
I hear that and I think basketball.
Yeah.
So it's like basketball, except you
can't dribble.
You have to stop when you catch the ball.
Okay.
And there's no backboard.
Have you seen that?
Okay.
And it's zoned a bit, so you have to remain in your zone.
No, it's so interesting how America doesn't have netball. Hey, like it just seems like something you grow up with. It's crazy.
Sorry to go off topic, but I didn't know that. But anyway, it's a predominantly female-dominated sport. Like when you're in high school and growing up in school, it's there's girls play it, guys don't play it. There's no guys teams.
Do guys play basketball instead of netball, or is
a lot of
not
guys
really
who play basketball might transfer over to netball if they want to play with girls and play in a mixed team? Yeah.
Okay.
But there's very few mixed netball teams in. I mean, actually, you probably know a little bit more about this, Fresh. In terms of like schooling, like when I was in school, there was definitely no.
It's seen as a girl sport, basically. Yeah,
it's seen as a girl sport, and I'm telling you right now that sport is, man, one of the most vicious sports I've played.
Yep. Okay, this sounds more and more like softball to me.
Yeah, I think great parallel.
Baseball.
I think a good parallel is American softball. Yeah. Like baseball,
I have
softball,
a friend
basketball, netball,
whose sister was a pitcher.
Yeah.
And she you don't wear anything over your face as the pitcher, that's the catcher, right?
Yeah.
So somebody hit a line drive and it went straight back and hit her right here and broke her orbital.
Oh, wow.
Like, softballs are not soft.
No, they're
a
not.
little bit
they're not at all. Gee.
But that's another vicious sport, right?
Yeah.
It can be.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, netball's got maybe a little bit more skin on skin contact. That's not the right way to say that. Like physicality, like him.
It's very similar to basketball in a few ways. Yeah.
It's a contact sport.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not classified as contact sport like basketball's.
I'm telling you,
but
I'm telling you right now, my ribs can attest to it being a contact sport for sure.
Yeah.
But you're right. You're right. It does kind of confirm that it's more this what we're talking about confirms that it's more human toxicity that we're talking about, and it is human toxicity. And I don't think that it should be labeled as male toxicity. And
you know what? I'm just sitting here thinking about the differences, and it seems, and maybe this, I'm just throwing this out there, maybe this is completely overgeneralization, and I know there is studies into it, how the difference between how men and women get their aggression out and how men are very overt and verbally or physically aggressive, and women don't tend to act out their aggression in that way. So it seems to be a bit more, what's the right way to say it? Not underhanded. That sounds not so good, but kind of like that. So maybe the overt aggression then is seen so much more and labeled as toxic masculinity, and maybe that's a part of why we see men as being toxically aggressive.
Is that like, are you kind of like comparing it to the fact that you've got in the world there's introverts and extroverts, and in a social situation, even though those introverts are there, when people walk away, they remember the extroverts because they were the ones that were loud and in your face, and it's a similar thing because we get rid of our, what did you say? I can't remember, but like aggression or whatever. Vent to get rid of aggression in a very more loud, verbal, maybe a bit violent kind of pushy, shovey way. That is what people remember and lock onto, rather than the flip side where it might be a little bit more downplayed and underhanded. I don't want to assign that to the female gender.
That sounds like a bad word. It's right, but but like I remember going through uni and they talk about studies about friendships between especially younger people, which once again are pretty good, like a blank canvas for how we tend to do things, and the young boys have big fights, and girls don't often get in physical or fights like that. They just will be like exclusive or something different.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, I like that way of looking at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that I think as far as the term toxic masculinity, I think there are masculine traits that are recognized as more masculine, and traits that are recognized as more feminine. And I don't think that necessarily we need to keep it that way.
Yeah.
But I feel like what you guys were just saying, there are certain ways that men will be toxic, and there are certain ways that women will be toxic.
Yep.
And then there's certain ways that everybody's toxic.
Definitely.
So I think that there's kind of like a Venn diagram there going on.
Yeah.
Where men might be more physically aggressive, and that's masculine toxicity. Women might be more catty, and I can't think of a better word than underhanded now, but
damn it, I started this.
Or exclusive or whatever.
Yeah.
And that would be a version of feminine toxicity. But then I don't know, just like stealing money from someone's wallet is just that's not something related to gender at all. That's just toxic behavior.
Or even just calling people names. I hear plenty of girls do that, and boys. So yeah, definitely huge crossovers. So
I think there's some of each, and then there's a lot of crossover.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I think that we need to, as a society, and we've touched on this already, but just to like really drive it home, we need to figure out what is that crossover bit and stop misassigning it and stop saying, hey, you're doing this because you're a guy, stop it,
because that's not why they're doing it.
Yeah, exactly. And start saying, dude, or like start saying, stop doing what you're doing as a human, like that is a terrible thing to do. Yeah, definitely.
Speaking about intrinsic differences, Woke, what was you have a point here, and you put Jordan Peterson at the end, and I have such a love-hate relationship with Jordan Peterson that I want to know what you're talking about.
Me too. Well, I was just trying to so he, there was a little bit of a phase there, where like when he first kind of blew up, where I was like, I watched a few of his things, and he kind of said, he was talking about how, and we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, about how we as a species evolved. And he was saying that there's these inherent kind of differences, not necessarily in the way of like, oh, like I'm a man and I've got more muscle mass and whatever, but in terms of like how we developed, because we are, and this is where you said what you said, Misterevets, like the hunter-gatherer thing, and because of that growing up. But you did pose an interesting point that like it's in the last couple of 100 years, we've seen like a very big uptake in this male versus female kind of thing. And it kind of counteracts what he really says quite a lot of the times, in terms of what I wrote down in the notes that you were referring to, Fresh, which is why I haven't actually brought it up. Is that, yeah, he says that there's these inherent things in us that we have evolved into, I guess, and men are inherently, like macho and wanting to be the protectors, because that's what we used to do, and that's what we had to do to protect our offspring
Standard
and stuff
Peterson,
like
that. Absolute standard.
Yeah, good old Peterson. Yeah, which is why I kind of like I kind of just left that. I wasn't actually going to bring it up.
Yeah, fair enough. Is that all? That was the point about him.
Yeah, well, yeah. I did kind of tie in there that like that our emotional resilience that we've talked about, that like that kind of thing where you say man up, that is quite often mistaken for apathy, which is where you're like, oh, this person doesn't care about what they're doing. And why is it that in those situations quite often it's like, oh, like it's because he's a man, that he's a man, he doesn't care. He's a man, he's reserved and withdrawn from the situation. But just because you're withdrawn from the situation and you're not sharing your feelings and openly and talking with everybody, doesn't mean that you don't care. It doesn't mean that you don't feel the same things. But quite often I've been in those situations where people mistake my emotional resilience and me being like, look, I need to be strong for this person and provide someone for them to lean on and confide in this moment, for you don't care about me. I don't know. Yeah. I've personally experienced that, and yeah.
I have too. I think that a lot of the reason, and I think this kind of ties into what you were saying about like what Peterson said about differences that have been built into us over generations and everything, just like physiologically. I think one of the reasons that idea is so prevalent is because it's easy. It's an easy explanation instead of having to actually dig into it and try and solve the problem. So it's kind of like brushing things under the rug, so to speak. And it's just kind of got that snowball effect where like you are being emotionally resilient, you are trying to take care of yourself. People think that you don't care because you're too focused on trying, or not too, but like you are intensely focused on trying to make sure that you're okay and not put that on other people. Like we were talking about before, like you don't want to be an energy sponge and just like offload all of your crap onto people all the time.
Yeah.
So I think maybe that's part of it too.
Yeah. Definitely. I think so. It's just being that's like just a bit too easy. That's like standard Peterson. I love him, but but he says all these things that are just like brilliant descriptive statements, but then and then you kind of led to go somewhere with the thinking, but he never tells you specifically where you go.
Well, I think I came to a point where I started to appreciate him, not necessarily for what he's saying, which is not a good place to be in terms of, I don't know what he calls himself, like a pseudo philosopher or something, but like I'm the
one with the philosophy.
Yeah, right. Back off, JP. But like in terms of the fact that by providing the opposite, he's definitely going down that route of the opposite side of this debate, being like, no, like stop attacking men. By taking that route, he is furthering the discussion. He is creating something for the other side to kind of fight against, and raising the status of the conversation and bringing it to the forefront of what we're talking about in today's society, which is important. and I definitely started appreciating him more for what he was doing there rather than actually what he was saying.
Creating an army of angry young men.
My favorite thing that I've ever heard him say is like when he's asked, why do you think that like 95% of your audience is white men? His response is, well, like 70% of the people who watch things on YouTube are men. So that's why it's men. It has nothing to do with the fact that like I'm excusing all of this toxic behavior because it's just what men do.
Yeah.
It's because 70% of YouTube users are men.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
He's very crafty in the way he'll speak to, because he'll go to a point where he will never make the normative claim ever, and people will try and you can see it really frustrates interviewers too, because they're like, what are you saying? And then he's like, no, I didn't say that. And then they're like, oh, you didn't say that.
Yeah, he's like, don't try to lock me in a box.
Don't try and say that. Yeah. But I mean, I love lots of the stuff he says. I think his psychology stuff is amazing, maybe unparalleled at the moment in terms of public people. But then we have this interesting thing where you have these people who are really good, and like Sam Harris too is really good at like mindfulness, and his neuro stuff is amazing. But then they step into this like philosophical and then political realm, which they're not really super well versed in. And so that's where it becomes like I don't know.
Yeah. But that's like a trap for young men.
Oh yeah.
I think
absolutely.
Yes.
And to latch onto someone who is very who is very, I don't know, he gives off a very masculine vibe, and he seems to have his life all together, and it's very easy to be sucked down that path of, oh, this is what I should be like, and this guy knows what he's doing, and I'm just going to model my life on everything he says.
Yep.
Are you guys familiar with the concept of Occam's razor?
It rings a bell. Maybe refresh us.
Yeah,
refresh the chat. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Of
course.
Yeah.
So just for the chat, because these guys are so well
because we know.
Occam's razor is basically it's a philosophical idea that states that it's most likely that the simplest explanation is the right explanation. And I think that argument gets taken too far with a lot of these, especially like with YouTube videos and things like that, where people like they have to take a really strong stance on something and try and get their message out so that they don't just kind of like fade in with everything else. And I think that's part of what he does. Is he just finds the simplest argument that he can, and then he'll expound on it too far. And I think that's why I don't agree with a lot of the stuff that he says, is because like he starts out from a place of genuine, like, I think this is like a real fact and I might agree with that. But then he just takes it off in different directions because it's the easiest explanation. And really, a lot of the time, I don't think it is.
And the trap with that, like you were saying before, is that the initial part is like amazing wisdom. So people are like, wow, okay, he's got this down. And then you start to believe a person after a while, and then you start to believe everything they say, and then you go on with that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Good. All
but
right.
I agree that he does have some good points, and he's, in terms of like not to go off topic, this is a bit away from masculinity, but in terms of what he can, the self-help side of things, where he's like, get your house together and get your work together, which is like get your life together before you start like trying to influence other people's lives.
Yeah. That's the psych side.
Good general advice.
Yeah.
Just great advice.
That's his, like so many years of clinical psych. That's amazing, that stuff. He just steps into a weird realm of politics that I don't know I don't particularly agree with all the stuff he says.
It's making him a lot of money.
It's true.
Why would you stop?
Why would you stop?
Yeah,
exactly.
He's actually said that too. It's like I'm just gonna ride this wave while I'm on it, I guess.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Just doing a whole lot of harm along with the little bit of good.
Yvette, I saw that you had in here as well, in our notes, that a little bit about older generations and how some of the ideas and ideals are passed down to us from them and are still sort of being passed down to them. Did you want to talk a little bit about what you were talking about there?
So, in America, at least, one of the most masculine things that you can do is, and that's not why I did it. I wanted to fly helicopters, but I actually did not end up in the military. I went to officer candidate school for the Marines. So it's you can either do 2 7-week sessions, like 2 summers following the other, or you can do it all at once, 13 weeks. But that's like your version of basic as an officer. So I was there for 3 weeks, and then it was not the right place for me, and I left. But when I was there, there was one staff sergeant in particular. The other guys were pretty good about it. Our company commander was awesome. But one of the people in charge of our platoon, like our group of 50 people that we were training, he would use a lot of different analogies that were just pure forms of toxicity. So like the one example that really sticks out in my mind is when you grab a rifle, you grab it like you mean it, right? So like if this is my rifle, when I come up, and this is for like doing this in formation, so everybody's doing it at the same time and same pace. So when you're gonna go grab for it, you come up like that and you grab the buttstock, right? So his analogy for that is it's like when you're reaching up a girl's skirt to pull her pants. And I told him that's not something that I'm cool with you saying.
Yeah, you told him that.
Like, well, tough. I'm in charge. Yeah.
Right.
Not in front of everybody, but I talked to him afterward, and I was like, dude, what the? What? That's not okay. So that's one example that really stuck with me, and that honestly is a big part of why I didn't end up in the military, because being on base and being there, like obviously training, they're gonna haze you and it's rougher and everything, but I just didn't want to be in a culture that was that toxic. And it was all about who can push for pole position and who can treat the other person worse and blah blah blah. And I don't think it's like that throughout all of the military, but I think a lot of it is, especially before deployment, like when you're in training and things like that. So that was one thing that just really stuck with me. And another thing, I did a short stint in car sales. That's a family thing. Like my grandpa owned a dealership. My uncle still does it. So I was like, I'll give it a shot. And decided I didn't really like it. It wasn't because of this instance in particular, but this was one of the things that seemed the same. It seemed very familiar because it was like 5 years after the military thing. But my boss would like sit us down at the end of the day, and all of the sales guys, and tell us things like, you need to keep asking for more money even if they say no, just like you would if there's that one really cute girl at the bar who you really want to take home for the night. Like, you're just going to keep asking her until she says yes. And I was just like, that's not a thing that people should do. If she says no, you're that's like, no. Oh, okay. Yeah. So my take on that would be, all right, well, she's not interested. I'm going to go find someone who is, which to me makes more sense in terms of sales, because I don't want to try and sell something to someone who doesn't want to buy it. I'm going to go find somebody who does.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but again, there's that mentality of like, you just keep doing this until she agrees. Just like wear her down.
Yeah.
And that was the example that was didn't sit right.
Yeah, right. And is that like and what you're trying to get at is that like that is an older generation's kind of thing, and they've been influenced by a different level of, I guess, masculine relationships and masculine stereotypes than we have. And even if we can see such a drastic change in their point of views from, like, I don't know how old those guys that were teaching you, probably like 20 years older than you know, or something like that.
That the military guy was only like 10 years old. The car sales guy was like 20, but yeah,
right. And well, I mean, that's definitely something that I mean, it's not just masculinity, you know, that's something that like older generations grew up in a completely different time with different stereotypes and different problems and different norms, and they perpetuate that every now and then in conversations and stuff like that. And it's always such a shocking thing when someone says it, you know, when like when someone's like, oh, like I'm not talking about dating her, just fooling around a little bit, you know, like just get on it, you know, and not necessarily saying that that's toxic or like bad, but like, that some of the things they come out with are just not something that we would say these days.
Right.
I was
Yeah.
I put down as well, like, to me, a lot of the time I see it because I coach a lot of sport, is with parents and the idea of good sportsmanship. And I think, and I was trying to think about it a lot, and I heard Joe Rogan talking about it as well, about how a lot of boys don't, and this is a little bit about what you're saying, a lot of boys don't learn how to graciously lose. So they will keep asking even if the answer is no. And
Yep.
and like, I remember that being playing soccer as a kid when I was really young, and we had this kid on the team who was just like, he was obviously the best player, but he was just like the worst loser ever. And anytime he would lose, or we would lose, he would chuck this huge wobbly and come off and like start kicking stuff around. And then I remember his dad as well would go up to him and be like, "Oh yeah, it's not your fault, it's the other kid's fault," and stuff. And I remember just being like, I'm like 10, man, and I can tell that this is like bad parenting. Whereas my dad would come and be like, it's not about winning or losing, it's about how you play the game, and you got to learn from this. Yep. And so on. And people, and I see that people, some of my friends even, they take that into later life with lots of things, and they don't know how to, I mean, maybe lose is not the right term, because in sport, I suppose you use that term, but they're not able to fail graciously and learn from that and move forward.
Accept failures and move forward. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I see it all the time in managing in hospitality. You've got these kids that they're like, they don't know, they're so afraid to fail that it ends up shooting him in the foot.
Yep.
Like, it happens so much.
It's all about winning or losing right there.
Yeah, right. And like, in terms of, and I'm in situations quite often where it's like, man, if you just admitted to what you've done and said, "Hey, I'm going to try to improve," then we're good to go, mate. Like, I'm out of here. But because you can't do that, and you end up doubling down, and then it becomes toxic.
If I can take that a little bit further, this isn't a point that I wrote. Should have been. I think also, like, it's important to call out these toxic behaviors when you see them, and try and help people stop. But also, it's really important, and I feel like this is something the internet's really bad at. But it's really important to leave room for growth for people. And if somebody is making excuses and saying, "Oh, you're just taking it the wrong way," blah blah. Well, probably that person is not making a concerted effort to make themselves better. But if you tell someone, like, to go back to our previous example of like this guy who grabs a girl's bum at a restaurant, and like, you stand up and you say, "Hey, dude, that's not okay. Don't do that." And he asked why. Well, that gives you room to tell him that that's not okay, because that's her body and she doesn't want you to do that. And you've got to get consent before you do things like that. And she clearly didn't give you consent, so now that gives him room to say, "Oh, okay, that's why what I did was wrong. I'm not going to do that anymore." Instead of just labeling that person indefinitely as a toxic person that you should stay away from.
Yeah, well said.
So I think it's like I said, I think the internet's really bad at it, but I think it's really important.
Actually, especially the left, like the people on the left are very not smart politically. Is that the way to say it? Like, I feel like people on the right are a lot more underhanded. I've got this word in my head now, but and they'll have these things in there that and then people maybe who are a bit ignorant or in the middle who don't really know any better will, I don't know, what's a good example? Like the Black Lives Matter movement, and then you have great movement, and then you have people on the right who bring in this all lives matter, or it's okay to be white, which people in the middle are like, "Oh, you know what, it's okay to be white," or all lives matter. They sound like great statements. And then people on the left just crucify them because they've got a different context to the statement, and then that leaves no room for growth. It just leaves all this hate and bitterness. So bad way of doing it.
And then nobody wins.
No one wins. The debate gets shut down. Everybody stops talking about it because they're too afraid. And then Fresh and Woke don't start a podcast to talk about these issues because we're terrified. Because we're terrified.
Yep.
If I can,
you go.
Oh wait.
Yeah. Nani, you go.
Just because it is very relevant to this. Food for thought. What if it's the other way around with Montegoose?
Oh yeah, Montegoose. Yeah. How you going, Montegoose?
I think that we kind of touched on this before, but I think that regardless of who's doing it, it's not okay. That's one of the examples where it's just toxic behavior.
Yes.
And it's more, I think, socially accepted for like a girl to flirt with a guy by, slapping his butt or whatever. But it still doesn't, in this kind of context where like if there was a 40-year-old woman who a couple too many drinks and then her waiter walks by and she just like grabs his crotch. Like I have friends that's happened to too, and it's not okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
But I think that kind of goes into the same kind of thing where like if you hear about Fresh, I'm not talking about you. Everyone, I'm not talking. But if you hear about a guy teacher who has an explicit, like illicit relationship with one of their students versus a female teacher who has an explicit relationship with their student, a lot of the culture, like people feel bad for a girl who's taken advantage in that situation, but they might just say, oh, well, it's okay because like he wanted it if it was the guy who had like an attractive teacher who hit on him. But either way, that behavior is not acceptable. It's toxic. Even if society says, oh, well, maybe it's more okay. It's not.
Yeah.
It's just not.
This reminds me of that
even
South
if it's the
Park
other way
episode.
around,
Have you guys seen that South Park episode where they're like,
wait, which one?
I don't know.
Some young boys, some like kindergartner is like having an affair with some 18-year-old, and they go to the police about it, and they're like, "Is that the blonde? Yeah, nice." It's like the standard, like perpetuating that rhetoric. Yeah.
And I think actually Joe Rogan has a bit about that in his special on Netflix. I agree with it a lot.
Yeah, for me, it's a lot to do with the balance of power. And people often will use the domestic violence example as well as like men. There's a relatively high portion of men who also get abused, and that's also obviously not good. And it's about looking at the balance of power in the relationship. So if you had a really strong lady, or better examples, maybe kids. So it's probably okay. It's not okay, but it's less. It's not so bad if a 4-year-old is whacking their dad on the face or something, as opposed to the dad smashing a 4-year-old on the face. Is the dynamic of power in that relationship, or even a teacher and a kid. Like if kids start fighting, it's not okay, but it's a different power dynamic to if I start beating the crap out of kids. It's a different story.
But I think that as well as saying that, you do need to recognize the fact that even though it is, you're right, less. It is less. I definitely think that the power relationship plays a dynamic that like it plays a role there.
Yeah.
But you have to also say that
it's not okay.
Like her behavior is not okay. She was doing that.
I think that's. But people. I'm suspect of people's motives when you have especially the domestic violence one. They're like, and then they jump to, well, men get abused as well. It's just like, yeah, and nobody's saying that's okay, but that doesn't contribute to the conversation, really, in my opinion.
Right. Well, and I think the same thing is kind of true with like the Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter.
Exactly.
I think there's definitely room for that to be explained as opposed to just crucifying people. Like you said, a lot of people on the left just jump to that.
Yeah.
But it's not like, we're not saying that all lives don't matter. And we're not saying that Black Lives Matter more than other lives.
Yeah.
We're just saying we need to call attention to the fact that Black Lives Matter because they're not being treated that way right now.
Yeah.
And by you saying all lives matter, you're taking attention away from the thing they're trying to call attention to. And I think the same thing is true, like you're saying with domestic abuse. It's like, yeah, men are abused domestically, but that bringing that up doesn't help us solve the fact that women are being abused domestically.
Yep. I've heard a pretty stock standard analogy with like houses. There's one house on fire in a street and you don't go, and people are like, that house needs attention, and people are like, well, all the houses need attention. It's like there's a problem there that we need to like fix now. So you can't say all of them need attention.
Yeah. I think we've. No, you go. No, you finish up. Okay.
Just quick saying that I have kind of grown to appreciate over the years, and it's not letting the fear of like failing to reach perfection. You shouldn't let that fear stop you from trying.
Very much so. What's that? The Nirvana fallacy? I think that's what it is.
Maybe. I'm not sure.
Like if there's not a perfect answer for something, you can't not have a conversation about it.
If you can do something to make things better, like the fact that you can't make it perfect doesn't mean you shouldn't try.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of falls in the line with that too, with all of these things that we're talking about. Like, we might not be able to fix humanity 100%, but at least we can like recognize that there are some issues and deal with those ones because we know they're there.
Definitely.
I feel we've talked. I mean, I kind of led us there because it was the way that I was thinking. But I think we've talked a lot about the toxicity side of things and how it's not good to talk about that. Could we potentially move into talking about some of the really positive things that come from trying to better yourself in a masculine way, make yourself more masculine? I know that. Who was it, Vets? You've got a few listed here?
Definitely.
Let me. Okay, so we kind of already talked about how, like, I don't know that there's necessarily such a thing as positive masculinity, so much as there's an elimination of toxicity and there's just good human behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's a nice point.
So I think we kind of touched on that already, but man, this purple is hard to read through.
Oh, sorry. My bad.
Okay, so one of the things, the first thing that I have listed here is actually one of the things that we've talked about already too, and it's standing up for those who are unable or unwilling to do so for themselves, and standing with those who stand up for themselves instead of just letting them fight their own fight. If somebody is in trouble, being there to help them if they need help. Whereas maybe not the best version of that would be like, let's see, a good way to deal with like a waitress getting grabbed is to say, hey, don't do that. A bad way to deal with it is to punch the guy in the face.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think that's one example of like positive behavior.
Yeah, definitely. I like that. That's good.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. I think that that's something that men do really well is seeing the downtrodden and seeing people around them and being like, you know what, like, I'll stand with you. You can rely upon me. You can lean on me to help you because I see that you're not able to do it for yourself, and yeah, I love that. I love that when I see that camaraderie in guys, and it kind of, I mean, I guess there's a toxic way to look at it where you go like, oh, like in a fight, my mate, my boys have got my back, if there was to ever be a fight, not that there has been, but it's that kind of thing. It's that willingness for the group of men around you to be like, you know what, like, I'm here for you. And I think that we need to try to, instead of being like, oh, that might necessarily be a bad thing, is maybe try to educate women. But like educate, sorry, I'm going a little bit of a different way here, but like educate women into how to like tap into that, I guess, or like how it is a good thing for them as well, I guess. Like it's not a bad thing for them.
Yeah.
I guess
I just disagree.
Yeah. And like, because in some of those situations, they can't physically stand up for themselves. So for them to be able to realize that they do have, and I'm sure so many women have and might not realize it, or I'm sure some of them do realize it, that there's a group of men around them somewhere that actually really, really have their back, and being able to learn to rely and trust upon that.
Yeah.
Is super important.
That's
I think. And it's a really, really positive part of masculinity that I love, and I guess I rely upon, and it gives me the confidence that I guess some people look at that confidence sometimes and they go like, oh, men have this like inherent confidence about them, but I think it stems from that camaraderie.
Yeah,
I think so.
A bit.
I think that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
And then I think that kind of leads into another positive trait that I would like to see more of, and that's just people having confidence in themselves. And it's not to say that like you should have confidence in yourself no matter what you're doing, even if you're just like screwing things up 100% of the time, because that's not a way to fix things that are wrong. But to be able to recognize your own value, I guess, and be confident in yourself in that way, I think is an important trait for everyone to work on. But I think it's something that as men definitely have a distinct responsibility to do, and make sure that we're not selling ourselves short, but at the same time we're not overly proud, like you were saying,
Yeah.
and overly confident, and mansplaining. What I hate that, but
Sorry, wait, what was the term? I missed
mansplaining.
mansplaining.
Oh, mansplaining. Ugh. Yeah, it's
I
rough.
just
That's
I
a rough
hate
one.
how that like male talk or masculine toxicity. I think both of those get overused. And I think a lot of it just like you could just remove the gender part and it would still be accurate.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, and I see that you put here as well, like take self-care seriously as like something that men do, and I'm not necessarily sure that's correct, but it does lead into that, like having confidence in yourself and realizing that taking care of your mental health as well as your body and just your life in general is something that's really, really positive for masculinity.
And I think the reason I put that there very late at night, but I think what I was thinking at that time was I think taking self-care seriously is part of being responsible for yourself, and that is an important trait to have.
Yes.
Taking responsibility for your own actions and the outcomes that come from your actions, like that. So one of the things that you can do for a better outcome is take care of yourself. Just be responsible in that sense.
Yeah.
Well,
I definitely agree with all of those points, and I think that there is a role for positive masculinity, not positive. And I know you said we shouldn't be calling it positive masculinity, but like, that just positive humanity and bettering yourself and trying to live your life in a way that you can be relied upon is a very positive thing to do, and I think we should all be striving towards it. And it's something that I definitely wanted to highlight is that I want men especially, and young men, to be thinking about who's around them and lending their support to them and reaching out to people that might be in disadvantaged situations and being like, hey, you can rely upon me, in times of need, or when you need me, I'm here for you, whether that be a woman or not, whether that be another mate, or whether that be, I don't know, anyone, and I think it's something that I want to impart on people, is that, and in my stream as well, just that I'm here for people, I'm here to listen, and I'm here to be relied upon, and I can be relied upon. And I think that's a super positive trait in masculinity that I don't want to lose that, for sure.
I think that's extremely prevalent. I've spent more time in Fresh's stream than yours, but I think that's a huge thing in the community here. And I look forward to seeing you build more of the same. It sounds like you've already got a good start on it.
All stems from Papa Fresh.
But I think it's great that you guys are creating these safe spaces for people to, not to use that term like too loosely, but like spaces where people feel like they're comfortable, places where people feel like they can talk to you if they need you for something. If you can do that thing for them, then you will. And you're not just gonna like brush people off. And I think that's sorely lacking in internet presence right now. So it's really good to see that there are some people who take it seriously.
Create the space.
Definitely. Fresh, any other thoughts from you?
Yeah, I mean, the only one I had on that kind of like positive, well, not the only one, but like the one I thought maybe we didn't cover was that men seem to, once again, super general statements, be a bit more maybe active in the way that they care for people. And I'm just taking this from like, I looked at I was just trawling YouTube talking about looking at masculinity, and there was all these like everyday hero videos, and like probably 99% of the everyday heroes were men doing these like amazing things for absolute strangers, like they run into like some river or something and save somebody, or like lifts like this, all these guys getting together and like lifting a car off and stuff. It's not to say that women can't do that, but I was like, oh, that's a really positive side of, like, an active side of masculinity that we can take and be like, oh, that's a cool thing that guys do often.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe being like taking that action and doing, we were mentioning that earlier, that guys do things, especially growing up, we do things all the time. We're men of action, and we're getting out and doing things. And that definitely translates into later life as well. We're men of action. We want to do things, sometimes it's bad, men of action. Sometimes it's bad when when someone around us is getting harassed and our action is to potentially get violent.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that is definitely not necessarily a toxic thing
No.
to
Just
bolster.
seems to be the way guys are wired a bit more. And maybe it's, and I don't know if that's, wired is probably not the right way to say it. It's probably not a biological thing. It's probably a cultural thing where we see the amount of hero stories, that you have about guys compared to girls. So maybe it's a thing that we can say this is a positive part that we see out of masculinity. Maybe we can encourage ladies in this area too, and we can all, be everyday heroes.
And I think along with that, like that idea of being everyday heroes, one of the things that you can do also as a guy is if you have kids, be involved in their lives.
Yeah.
Don't just put that off as women's work, because it's not.
Yeah.
That child is
100%.
part of you.
Yeah.
And you owe it to them to give them everything you have.
That's good.
Because they can't do it without you.
Do you have any kids,
that's
Mr.
another
Events?
positive trait. I do not. No.
Okay, you'd be a good dad. You should
Well,
have some kids.
I've got my big furry one.
There you go. Yeah.
The doggo.
I got like a nephew and a goddaughter. But,
Oh yeah, very nice. Cool.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess it's probably around time that we wrap this up, unless anyone else has some other thoughts.
So I got a viewer question from the Discord, and
some viewer questions. Nice.
Guys, if you do have a viewer question, ! Question, I can't write. Somebody else ! Question in the chat. You can go into the Discord and there's a channel there called Podcast Questions. So the first one we had was from Vibe. Well, we got a few. So one from Vibe here.
Mate.
And he says, do you think masculinity is linear? And do you guys think men should feel less worried about being a man and more concerned about being genuinely caring and emotionally in touch with your lives and others around them? So I'm not 100% sure about what he means about the linear part. Can anyone expand on that? What do you think?
In terms of linear, I think, what I take out of it is like, no, I definitely don't think so. So like when most people talk about linear things, they're talking about like, oh, do you think it's just one way or the other? Or is it like, everybody's different and everybody finds their own path, and it's like up the mountain and then down the mountain and to the right over here, and it's not just like down a straight line. That's and I think that everybody finds masculinity their own way and has their own interpretations on it. Interpretations.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry, for some reason that word sounded funny in my mouth.
I think agreeing with that, masculinity should, or like, I think we've kind of been touching on this a couple of times here and there. We want to focus less on positive masculinity and more on, like you said, being more concerned about being a genuinely caring and emotionally in touch person. And I think that is just like, being a positive person. And it's less important to be a specific type of man and more important to be a good type of person.
I agree.
Definitely. I agree.
Yeah.
It's good. Good, lads. Sinte had
no
a question.
Disagreement here.
No disagreement.
Ooh,
Sinte, but Sinte's we pretty much covered. She said talk about the Gillette ad and is toxic masculinity a thing. So I feel like we covered that pretty well. Good, Sinte. Thank you.
Thoroughly. But thanks for the question.
Yeah. So let me just double check.
Well, I definitely, I can't say it enough that I think that men have an important part of this world, and I think that we can be relied upon, and I wish that more people in my life would reach out to me and rely upon me, and I think that that's something that every man should be striving to do, and I think it's something that I definitely think that is part of masculinity, and I believe it's a part of masculinity, because masculinity to me is just my humanity. I am a man, therefore I am masculine. And from that is my humanity, and I think that I want to reach out, and I want to reiterate that, because I just think it's so important for everybody to hear.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, and masculinity in and of itself is not a toxic.
No.
I don't think any of us here think it is.
Yeah.
No,
it's just certain behaviors that just don't do them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
whether you're a guy or a girl, just don't do them.
Yeah, definitely, it's good.
Oh, I think Monty might be coming in with a question.
Looks like Monty's
real quick, he says.
That's cool. Well, shall we start the beer review while we, or should we wait for? What do you reckon? What's the go work? What do we do?
I mean, we can roll through it. Like, I can do mine. I'll start mine if you want.
Okay. All right. Go for it.
Well, it's more for me.
Yeah, and then after me, maybe we can take another question real quick.
Cool.
So I don't know how well this is going to focus in, but look, what actually can you bring those topics up again? Oh, here we go. Where is it?
Yeah,
Beer
appearance,
review.
taste, and
Appearance
drinkability. Appearance out of
was one of
5,
them.
taste out of 10, and drinkability out of 5.
So appearance is one of those things with beer that sometimes, I don't know, you get those like really those beers that you're drinking and you're like, oh, it kind of tastes like a lager, right?
Mm.
And then you pour it into a glass and you're like, oh, it's like almost like a dark beer, and it freaks you out a little bit. So I don't know, I'm not 100% convinced on the appearance's role in this, because I think if a beer tastes good, it tastes good.
Yeah.
But that said, I think that there have been beers that I've had before poured for me into a glass, like in a pub, like where I've gone, oh, that looks like a cloudy mess.
Yeah.
And it's not appealing at all. I don't want to drink it. It should have stayed in the brown bottle.
Mm.
But this beer, the Peach Invasion New England IPA by Rocky Ridge Brewing Company, is a nice pale ale look. Got a bit of sediment in there, which is usually, I'm trying to that's usually quite often with Indian pale ales. So to me, it just looks like an IPA. I've had 1,000 IPAs in my life, and this looks exactly the same. So I don't know how to rate it. Appearance 5. I mean, it looks like an IPA.
All right.
Right. It doesn't look gross. In terms of taste, so you guys know, I'm sure you've had them. It reminds me of a little bit of, I don't know if you guys have ever had it, Matzo's, probably not you, Misterevets. Matzo's mango.
The mango,
beer. Have you ever had it?
Yeah.
And how it's kind of one of those beers that you drink it. It's a very novel taste. It's kind of a little bit sweeter, but it's not like cidery. It's weird. And you drink it, and maybe you might have a second one, but then that's where your drinking ends for the night. After your second one, you're like, okay, that's enough. Yeah. And it kind of reminded me of that. The peach in it was like really, really strong.
Okay.
And it almost came out semi like syrupy. Like a little bit like peach syrup in a beer was kind of like how it tasted in my mouth.
Chemically, and maybe? No?
Not chemically.
Not chemically?
No,
okay,
not chemically. It was still tasty.
Yeah, okay.
Right? Like mango, Matzo's mango beer is a tasty beer. You know, and you drink it and you love it and you go, wow, I want to drink heaps of this, you know? And then you get to the bottom of your bottle and you're like, ooh, you know what? Actually, I think it's time for me to switch beers. Yeah. So it is good, and I really enjoy this beer, but I think it's one of those things that you buy and you share around. Everybody has like one can each, and you taste it, and it's novel and it's interesting, but it's definitely not a session beer. You know, I couldn't drink more than at a push 2 of these in a night, you know? But I mean, I enjoyed it. It was tasty. So I'm going to give it, what's the taste out of 10? I'm going to give it a 5.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, a 5 out of 10, I think.
Pass mark.
And what? Sorry, can you give me another thought on the drinkability? Sorry,
drinkability.
So the three things we're doing here is appearance, taste, and drinkability.
Drinkability is mainly like, could you buy a carton? Well, you actually covered it almost in taste.
Yeah,
so
I kind of covered it.
I feel like drinkability is more. Yeah, how, would you would you buy a whole carton of these? Would you drink them over a whole night, kind of thing? How drinkable?
Yeah, and that's a definite no for me.
Okay. So
I've had some amazing IPAs that I've spent whole nights on IPAs and loved it. So this one is definitely not a mainstay. I definitely I don't think I would ever invest in a whole carton of it personally. But man, like I really enjoyed drinking it.
Yeah. Okay.
But I'm done, and I do actually have a second beer here because I was like, oh, when we get to the end tasting, I'll go for another one. But man, it's so sweet, you know. And that I really enjoyed it, but I think I'm done. So
that's low
drinkability, I'm gonna give a 1. Yeah, I think. And taste, I'm gonna up the taste now that I've kind of distinguished those in my mind. I'm gonna go more of a 8.
Okay, so that's 14. 14 out of 20. Is it?
Yep.
8.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Not a terrible score. Not a terrible score. I'm gonna come in with Monty's question. I think in between the beer review, so that we finish off the last question. But What way do you want to portray masculinity for future generations, considering the societal change in definition the word is taking in this day and age?
That sounds complicated. Let's not talk about it.
Wait, I just want to read it again.
So
What way do you want to portray masculinity for
Put it in the
future
chat.
generations, considering the societal change in definition
The word is taking.
the word is taking?
So masculinity as a word is taking a slightly different definition on. So how would you want to portray it for future generations? That's probably a good summary.
I think we've definitely kind of touched on that a little bit, that we want to steer away from the word masculinity at all. I think all three of us were semi in agreement here that we wanted to steer away from the word masculinity and move to humanity. You know, that it's not okay for toxic behavior across the board to be allowed and accepted. And I disagree with when people target things as inherently masculine, because when you do that, and it's the same with any stereotype, you're putting people in a box. When you say this belongs to masculinity, what you're saying is, as a man, I am responsible, or I have that behavior inherent to me. And that is just not true. And you should never use generalizations like that. And you should never use stereotypes like that. And I think, I don't know, you feel free to speak up. I think that we definitely agreed at one point or another that, masculinity as a word, and especially in the societal context that is being used a lot today, we want to steer away from.
Yeah, I think that summed up pretty well.
Yeah. And I think just to add one little bit to that, I think the way that definitions and terms and phrasing and attention is being changed in this like day and age, I think that we're going to start to move more away from terms like masculinity and femininity and talk more about humans, because there are so many different things that are going on in the world, like with regards to gender, that those waters for the conversation are getting so muddy that you can't actually have a real conversation anymore, because people don't think it means the same thing. So I think part of it is just going to be a shift from these are behaviors a man should have, and these are behaviors that shouldn't have, to these are behaviors that a person should have.
Yeah, good call.
Like traits, and these are traits that a person shouldn't display.
Yeah.
So I think that's, kind of what you were saying.
Yeah.
We're getting away from just saying all men are this way because it's masculine.
Good sum up, lads. I'm not gonna take away from that.
Not gonna mess with that one.
No, that's good.
No props. Alrighty, guys.
Well, one last question. Hold on. Did you?
One last question. Sorry,
one
I
last
missed
chat
that one.
question. Or were you going to go on to the beer? Because we're going to go one last chat question. So this is from Supergirl Sonic. Do you think women are more likely to label a man as behaving with toxic masculinity, or do you think men are harsher on each other and put more pressure on each other to behave a certain way? I think in generally speaking, it seems like women... I think generally speaking, it seems like women have been the ones to at least raise the issue about toxic masculinity, whether or not.
I think. Sorry to interrupt. I think it's because they. I think it's because it really, they perceive those toxic masculinity things as seriously affecting them. That's why I definitely perceive it coming from quite a few women. Is that I think that those toxic masculinity behaviors, to use the term, refer to things like domestic abuse and rape and those kind of things. That quite a lot of it has to do with women, and that's kind of how the word is getting used quite a lot of the time. It's to refer to those kinds of things. Yes, I think that's. But I mean, at the same time, I think that it does come from men as well. But I don't think that we would ever label it as toxic masculinity. I guess I think it's I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I think that I think you're right. I think it's less likely that men would label it as toxic masculinity, and I think that kind of relates to the last question too, where you're putting men into a box. And men are less likely to do that as part of that group than someone who is looking in from the outside. So I feel like maybe it's more commonly labeled that way by women, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. It's definitely hard for me to put myself, or like to speak for women, and be like, oh yeah, it's definitely coming from women. I would
young
never say
white
that.
guys speaking for women.
like,
We're doing it again,
it's
boys.
coming from society in general, and I don't think that it's a good thing to be using masculine in that way.
Yeah. I think I'd be very okay with saying that people on the progressive side of the population are way more likely to label guys as toxically masculine, and people on the conservative side would be way less. But that's quite an obvious thing to say, though. So I think it's probably more of a social/political view than a gender thing.
I think maybe to add to that, the people on the more conservative side would be less likely to call it out at all, rather than just less likely to label it.
Yeah, you're right. Actually,
I agree.
I feel like it's more about the status quo on that side.
Yep.
Which
definitely.
is a bad thing as well.
Yeah.
I agree.
So we agree conservatives are bad. Let's move on.
Not what I said.
That's what we're taking away from the podcast, everybody. Lock it in. Sweet. That's cool.
Continue with the beer review.
Yeah, beer review. You guys have got 2 more to go. Let's hit it up.
Yep.
Misterevets, do you want to go next?
Yep, go for
Sure.
it.
So I said this at the beginning, but I'll say it again. This is a beer that I've had several times. It is very early in the morning for me drinking, so I wanted to pick something safe instead of something that was going to make me make faces.
Nice.
But this is Bell's Two-Hearted Ale. It's an American IPA. It says on the can, a perfectly balanced American IPA brewed with 100% Centennial hops and bursting with aromas ranging from pine to grapefruit.
Oh,
and I feel like that's pretty accurate. That's a lot, but I think that the pine and grapefruit notes definitely come through a lot. It's kind of more of a, I don't want to say earthy, but like more of a foresty beer, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
like if you're walking through a pine forest or whatever, that, especially if it's humid, that kind of feeling.
It's kind of like not necessarily a summer day, but it's more of a winter beer.
Yeah, or even fall, I think.
Okay.
Fall.
Interesting.
Autumn.
Yeah. Autumn, whatever. Whatever.
We don't have fall here.
But I will definitely say it is a heavier beer. So in terms of, I guess I'll just start at the bottom with drinkability. In terms of drinkability, I would probably give this like a 3.
Okay.
Because it's very good. It tastes very good. But it's hard to drink a lot of it because it is such a heavy beer when it sits in your stomach.
Okay.
And then the other thing about it is it's like I think it's like an 8% beer. 7%.
Oof.
So
wow.
Yeah, mine was pretty strong as well. It was like 6.5.
Yeah, mine's 6.5.
And this is a pint can, so I'm.
Oh man!
Way.
So when you said light beer, you were like, you're actually trying to show off. This is actually really heavy.
I didn't
beer.
say it's a light beer, did I?
No, not light. Just you wanted an easy beer, sorry.
Oh yeah, no, I wanted one I was familiar with.
Yeah.
Familiar. Okay, cool.
That's got to be like 3 standard drinks or 3 and a bit standard drinks. That's hectic.
Wow.
One standard drink here, like a standard pour from a draft, is a 16-ounce pour, which is what this is.
Okay.
So
cool.
Interesting.
I don't know what that translates.
Different classification, yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't know either. But yeah.
But anyway, so drinkability, I'd say 3 because it's good and it tastes good and it goes down smooth, but you just can't drink a whole lot of them, just like you were saying about the peach one. For taste, I would probably give it. Like a 9 because I think there is still some room for improvement there, but mostly in terms of intensity, there's just a lot of flavor sometimes when you take like a big gulp or whatever. There's just a lot going on and a lot of aftertaste and everything, which is good. But so what did I say? 3 for drinkability, 9 for taste and appearance. It's a very nice amber color. I don't know.
Yeah,
that's
right.
Pretty accurate to what's going on. Not a whole lot of sediment, but there's a little bit in there. It's not a particularly crisp beer. It's not heavily carbonated, but it's still got some bite to it. So I would say for appearance, I'd give it a solid 5 for appearance. I like the look of this beer. It's not one that I would put back into brown bottles.
Yeah.
Nice. And just to lean into drinkability, you said a 3. Would you buy a carton of it?
Absolutely, I have many times.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
Sweet.
Nice.
But I would not go through like these come in 4-packs. I won't drink all 4 of these in a night. I'll probably have 2 and then.
Yep. No, good call
Yep.
then. So that's a
mine
17.
was definitely similar.
17 out of 20. Good beer. Good classic.
Nice.
All right, lads. So once again, I've got the Four Pines. Very nice Australian brewing co, I believe. They have it's 6.5%, 6.3%, 1.9 standard.
We've all gone the heavier ones.
Yeah. And it's described as dank, paunchy. You know something's good when the first word is dank. It's gonna be good.
I don't know what that word means.
It's like
I thought dank was like dark and like wet. Isn't that dank?
Yeah, that's what I picture it as. Definitely.
Okay, so this beer's dark and wet,
obviously
guys.
it definitely has marijuana connotations.
Oh wait, I didn't know about that. Gee. All right, well I'm drinking so it's marijuana-y, paunchy, resinous. Hops are all time. Anyway, I'm not going to read all of it. So appearance, it's a fairly light colored but very cloudy. Pretty like what you'd expect from an IPA. Maybe a little bit lighter colored than I'd expect.
Mm-hmm.
But so I'd give it a 5, I guess, because that's what you'd expect of a.
It looks good to me.
Looks
good.
So I give it the 5 for the appearance. Squinting. 5 for appearance. Taste. It was very good. I wouldn't say it's the best IPA I've ever had. I like maybe slightly. It's very tasty, but it's a bit crisp. It's like a bit more of a not a pale ale, but just a little bit crisp compared to some other IPAs I've had. I like that, like where you have a bit more hopsy and a bit more
florally.
Is it maybe more like a
or like fruity or like a citrusy or like you get a bit more of
heading towards a Pilsner.
Yeah, in a way. So I'm gonna give it an 8, I reckon, or maybe I should go 7. Because it's very good. Like it's very good. And drinkability, I would 100% buy a carton of these and drink all night easily. So I reckon I'll go 5 for drinkability. Nice. I'll give it a 7 for taste. So I went, what did I do? 5,
you did
7,
5 for drinkability, 7 and 5.
So
17 again. There you go.
Nice.
We picked some solid beers, gents.
Yeah. Good beers. Good beers, guys.
Really enjoyed mine. So very good. Awesome, guys. All right. Well, that's pretty much all we've got for you today. Thank you, Misterevets, for coming on the podcast. I
absolutely
really enjoyed talking to you. And
where can we find you, Misterevets? Are you streaming? Are you going to be streaming regularly? We had this conversation a little bit before.
Or on Twitter?
I'm not going to be regularly for fun. But I used to do it like 3 times a week pretty stringently at certain times. I'm a little bit more lax about that now. But if you do want to look me up on Twitch and give me a follow in case I do go live, it is just the same as what's up
above there. At Misterevets. There you go.
Nice.
Yep. So that is what my name is on Twitter. That's what it is on Facebook if you do the pages thing. And then it's the same on Twitch too. So if you want to try and find me, those are the places I'll be hiding.
Very nice. What do you want to?
And also, thank you for having me.
Oh, no worries. Thank you so much for coming. The 100%. I don't know about what Woke's feelings are. I'm putting him on the spot here, but I want to get Avets back again for some of the other topics that he's talked about.
I was actually going to say the same thing.
Okay, good.
Really enjoyed talking to you.
And even having a 4th would be really nice too sometimes. That'd be cool.
No, definitely. Which brings us to another topic, guys. If you think this, I think it's below me if I do like this, this panel could have your beautiful face in it, potentially. Hit up Fresh. Wait, where do
Both
they
of us. Discord,
either
Twitter
of us.
messages.
Yeah, definitely.
Woke, hit him up. Probably not Avets. He'll be like, all right, just so Fresh and Woke. But hit us up. Send us a message. We've got like a really long list of people who are really keen already. So you feel free to join that list.
You can obviously you're watching this on Fresh's Twitch, but you've got the same Twitter handle, and I've got the same Twitch and Twitter handle as below me here.
That's it. And if you'd like to, if you missed part of the podcast, obviously live, you can, I'm going to go ! YouTube. The YouTube is also just Fresh Plays Live if you want to catch up on the rest of the episode. I'm going to explore putting it on Spotify as well. I'll have a look at that this week.
I don't mind that. And I guess last thing that we should talk about, unless you've got something else fresh, is mental health support.
Yeah, I thought, that's a good one because we've maybe uncovered a few subjects that can trigger people. So put a couple of numbers here that so for Australian people, if you're feeling like you need to call someone, Lifeline's a great place to call on 13 11 14 13 11 14 Lifeline. And then I picked also an American institution because Vets is from America, in case we had some viewers from there too. So Mental Health America was 1-800-273-8255, 1-800-273-8255 if you need a chat. Those are both 24-hour helplines that you can call.
Awesome.
Last thing, I think, thank you so much to all the follows and the hosts and that happened during the podcast. I keep them off so that we don't get super distracted, but really appreciate all of the support, guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And thank you very much for tuning in. And thank you, Misterevets. Thank you, Fresh. And I guess we'll see you guys soon. I'm probably going to jump back on, play some games in a little bit. So feel free to tune in.
Yep, I'll give them the raid. Cool. There you guys.
Catch you later.